I just keep calling on the help of my peers, but their success makes me distressed. Things will be better when I disappear, bouncing from city to state. Nothing feels great, I'm a committed disgrace. If I could get up, hold my chin up, confidence is just a bluff for the weak. Might take a peek in my self-pity to realize it's selfishness for the meek. Just take these pills, it makes it better, but withdrawals will make you seize up and tweak. You gotta buy it every month, we change the brand, it's more expensive this week. I'll hold my chin up, keep this grin up like my mother, she can worry like me. But if I have you, life is worth it, love is more than a contagious disease. I think of you, I think of me, a family, is this another pipe dream? But if these dreams mean anything, I'm gonna think whatever I want to think. I just can't convince myself to look. Why can't I be strong in the place where you read your books? I just can't rely on happenstance. Didn't say goodbye before you died, I should've took that chance. But you'll never leave me, no, my heart is bleeding, and I know this feeling's not fleeting. Your hugs were the best thing, just wrapped up in your strength. I'd give up to be there right now. I just want you back, we all want that. I just wish that you hadn't forgotten. I hate this disease, I hate human beings. We fall apart before we get broken. I just can't believe you're not here with me. We should be out back, sitting underneath that willow tree. Talk and I'd be listening. I didn't take the time to read your mind before you forgot me. Okay. But you'll never leave me, no, my heart is bleeding, and I know this feeling's not fleeting. Your hugs were the best thing, just wrapped up in your strength. I'd give up to be there right now. I just want you back, we all want that. I just wish that you hadn't forgotten. I hate this disease, I hate human beings. We fall apart before we get broken. Lock myself in my room to listen to voices recorded. Don't walk outside to avoid being avoided. This feeling that comes with not having a purpose. If I find something soon, maybe I won't feel so worthless. I've always felt this rhythm, but I thought it'd be pointless. Playing music that's for rich folks, not a prophet of poignance. Pointless is a feeling that comes over me often. Though I keep going for a fear of not affording my own coffin. I know I sound sad, but I've got to be honest. helps me change, then I have to. Not even for me, but everyone that I matter to. I've got this feeling life won't always be like this. My dad said to me, it's your calling, your purpose. Walking through this life like a man with no shadow. Always by myself, just trying to find my way. I've got no idea of how to get this thing started. Looking for a way out never got me by. I'm so scared and I don't know what to do. All this medicine does is hide the truth. How could you be happy if you've got nothing to prove? So get up and get out there, son, what you got to lose. Walking through this life, forgetting strife in the rear view. Don't prolong the pain, I owe myself more than that. If I learned my lesson, could I go back to high school? Tell myself to have some fun, don't be so pent up. I'm so scared and I don't know what to do. All this medicine does is hide the truth. How could you be happy if you've got nothing to prove? So get up and get out there, son, what you got to lose. Lock the door and run hot water.
All right, everybody, and welcome to this special edition of Shoe Bros Unfiltered. You've got myself, Ross, here with my brother Kyle, and we'd like to introduce some very special guests today, here only. Go ahead, you Wright brothers, and tell them who you are.
I'll go ahead and start. My name's Damani Felder, Flight Texas Aggie class of 2014. From San Antonio. I look up, to my older brother. I'm living up here in Dallas, Texas right now. You can find me on social media at the Damani Felder, across Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and I'm also on Facebook at Damani Brian Felder.
All right.
Well, hey, howdy, y'all. This is Trey Felder. Some know me as Eddie. I went by Eddie up until I went to A&M, and then I started going by Trey. So everybody else calls me Trey. Fighting Texas Aggie class of 2010, the perfect class of 2010. You can find me on social media at tbirdtrey_10. That's tbirdtrey with a 3, not an E. Of course, at the Wright Brothers Facebook page, at the Wright Brothers IPID. Or you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, or if you're a sane person, don't follow me at all because it gets crazy out there. Thanks for having us on, guys.
Thank you so much for coming on. So for all of our YouTube subscribers and all the people who are coming to watch the Wright Brothers, make sure you click that subscribe button on YouTube. Make sure you click that notification bell, click all notifications so that you see all the different Zero Gravity media feeds coming to you, whether it be Schumann Brothers Unfiltered, whether it be HSP, whatever we got, whatever's coming to you. Make sure you're getting to know what it is, what's up, and where it's coming to you. Again, we want to thank the Wright Brothers, but let's go ahead and bring Kyle in and let him say a little bit.
Yes, sir. Thank you for introducing me. That's unusual. I'm Kyle Schumann, class of 08, and Trey, push.
So, as for all of our listeners who know, this is going to be a hard night for me. because I'm going to have to listen to these three talk about A&M, the worst subject in the world for me. So this is just going to be one of those nights. But we're going to talk a little bit about Aggie basketball. We're going to talk a little bit about the upcoming A&M football season. We're also going to talk about some Spurs basketball because they've got some stuff going on. We're going to talk about sports in general, the draft's coming up. Then we're going to get into these guys and their past and their futures. We're going to talk about what they got going on, why they are who they are, and what they can bring to the table when it comes to the black community, when it comes to showing how we can all be conservative regardless of skin color, regardless of our identity, regardless of our upbringing, and conservative values can work for everybody. So, gentlemen, go ahead. Tell me why you two are you two.
We started the channel back actually in 2018. My brother and I have been politically active on social media, or at least politically outspoken, since 2008 and 2012, respectively. And we kind of engage people back and forth, kind of like if you think about a cat playing with a ball of yarn, just toying with it here and there. And we did that back and forth via comments on social media for quite some time. And then one day someone said, you should bring this to YouTube, bring this to the screen. And I said, I'm not sure how to do it. But if you think that, we can do it, I was honored by someone's impression that we would even be so successful on this forum. So we decided to go ahead and start. And, I taught myself how to edit and produce and all that good stuff. And just spend so many hours behind the scenes making sure that we try to create a product that's worth watching. And it's just been an incredible ride so far. Just lots of support from everybody. We can't say thank you to everybody who supported us enough. And, we just continue to move forward and just try to really inspire people to think for themselves, but do so from a standpoint not of inherently being, incendiary, but actually approaching matters that count with the facts that count as well.
All right.
Yeah, and that just to piggyback off what Damani was saying, we originally started this channel envisioning it just to be kind of a window into the types of conversations that he and I have been having for years, for over a decade now, just back and forth talking about whatever might be happening in the political sphere. And we were politically active, at least in our personal lives, and definitely on social media prior to starting the channel. I was actually a member of the College Republicans my upperclassmen years at Texas A&M. But we wanted to bring something more to the table than just another kind of, shock jockey. Hey, look, we're conservatives who are black, and you should listen to us for that reason. Like that. After a while, it's like, look, people see us on screen. Our skin tone is self-evident. We don't need to hammer that point home all the time. So let's bring something more substantive to the table, and we can make it funny with our different segments. But I really want to take this time to tip my cap to my younger brother, because he is really the engine behind our channel. He makes the whole thing go. And I told him this from Jump Street, because we talked about doing this for a long time, back when I might have had a little bit more time on my hands. But I'm the one who's married. I have a kid who's two and a half, got another one on the way. We both work full time. So I was just like, look, I'm going to support you as best I can. But as far as production value goes, you're going to have to be the one that's going to be driving this thing. And to his credit, he picked up that mantle and completely ran with it. You can see the progress from our early videos all the way up to where we are now. Self-taught production value and everything that we've been blessed. We don't do this for cash or for clout or for anything like that. But anything that people feel blessed to give us, we invest straight back into production value for the channel or opportunities for our channel, because it's a hobby. It's not what we do 24/7, but we take great pride in our work and in the product that we're putting out there for the public. So that's basically us in a nutshell: hardworking lay people with strong opinions on politics. And our biggest goal is to make sure that identity politics is dead.
I couldn't agree more.
Well said. So I was going to kind of give our little story on our end too, because Ross ran for Congress out in District 11, Texas 11. And when he announced that he was running for it, I was like, if this fool embarrasses us, I'm just going to have to, disown him even more than I already had. So we'd always talked on the phone. We'd always had our, sports conversations, and every once in a while we talk politics. For the most part, we, talk sports. And so when he started, running for Congress, I started, okay, well, what's your platform? What's your positions? What's the big thing you're running on? And then I played devil's advocate to him because, who'd rather to challenge you on all of your positions than your own brother and your own family? So we did that, and we were having good conversations and talking a lot, doing that reason. And then Ross, out of family obligations and financial obligations, decided to drop out of the race and back August Pfluger, who ended up winning. Yep. And when he did that, we kind of toyed around with the idea of, okay, well, we're already making these phone calls. Why don't we just record them and put them out for the public to see? And it's so far so good. We're slowly growing. We don't have a ton of followers, but we're making ground.
We don't have 30,000 followers on Twitter or anything.
No. or 9,000 YouTube subscribers, or right at it. I'm like 3 of them, by the way.
We'll take every one.
I tell you.
There you go.
So that's the beauty of it all too. Is from what you two brothers are doing and what we're doing. It's not like anyone's doing this for show. These are just our true, actual convictions on the matters of the day. And when people see that authenticity, it's just a matter of time before people begin to attach themselves to it. Because in the world that we live in today, with so much, everything is so highly stylized. Everything is all about getting that click, getting that attention, getting those followers and all. But if you remain true to your convictions, it really doesn't matter, what anyone else is doing, as long as you remain ideologically consistent. That's what we strive to do with our channel.
Well, and for me, it's about giving representation to young conservatives, because I think so much in the media, young people don't feel like being conservative is for them. They feel like that's the okay boomer movement. And there's such a movement. I'm young, I'm 30 years old, and I ran for Congress. Now, did I stay in it real long? No, but I ran, and I went to campaign events, and I talked to people, and I can tell you that when I was at events and when I could get people to show up and when I could talk to them, they were like, "Oh my God, this guy is truly conservative, and he has convictions, and he's following to them." And these are young people, because a lot of the older generation, especially out in West Texas, they think, "Oh, these young people, they're liberal, they just want free stuff." And no, there is a large segment of hardworking young people who want to come out, who just want a chance in life and just want to be able to make a living. I moved out to West Texas to get that opportunity because I work in oil and gas. So, I have a saying when it comes to oil and gas: you can have a good job in a shitty place, or you can have a shitty job in a good place. And I had to move to, Midland, Odessa to get the good job. And so, I've been blessed to have a lot of support amongst my family, amongst my wife, my kids. But what you were saying, Trey, it's a lot like what you have with your brother with Damani is the same what I have with Kyle. Kyle is the one that's setting up these streams. Kyle's the one that's booking guests most of the time. Kyle is the one that's doing these other things, because I work in the oil gas industry, so I'm gone a lot. I'm out in the field. I don't ever know when I'm going to get a phone call, and I'm going to be in a truck driving 2 a.m. this morning, out the door. But so Kyle's the one setting stuff up. Kyle's the one taking care of it. So I do appreciate that Kyle does that. Now, Kyle, mute your headphones because I don't want you to hear any of this. But he does a lot of work on his end, and it's been a lot of fun. And we, like you guys, I think for us it's just a labor of love. We just enjoy doing it. And if that turns into somebody wanting to help us out or somebody wanting to see us get further or whatever it is, then great. But right now, this is just something we enjoy doing. And what's even better is we get to talk to guys like you, and we get to see what makes you guys tick, and we get to have these long conversations that we probably wouldn't get to have without this. And we've had that opportunity now with several different people to have several different guests on and have great conversations about politics, about sports, about whatever else. So again, I want to thank you guys for coming on. So let's broach the first topic. Let's broach San Antonio Spurs.
Oh God!
Trey's favorite subject, or least favorite right now.
So I have a theory, and I'm going to go with, we keep hearing the saying, "Get woke, go broke," right?
Yeah.
And in 2014, when the San Antonio Spurs won the title, The thing about the Spurs from 1999 to 2014 is they just never said anything. You never heard anything about the basketball team. You never heard anything about Tim Duncan. You heard a little bit about Tony Parker and Eva Longoria, but you didn't hear about Manu Ginobili. You didn't hear about Kawhi. You didn't hear about Tim Robbins. You didn't hear about Pop. You didn't hear about anybody. It was just a mystery that somehow this engine just kept turning and they kept winning championships. And then in 2015, 2016, Pop started getting a little more political in his speech. He started being a little more advocate to his political positions. And now all of a sudden, the record has taken a nosedive to where they're probably going to be a lottery pick this year. And it'll be the first time in 22 years they won't make the playoffs.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to take the lead on this because I know. I'm sorry. I had to. I used to work part-time for the San Antonio Spurs blog, Pounding the Rock. And so I've been in some small way just a kind of a part of that rise and plateau of excellence. And then now we're seeing the other side of that. It's interesting. I think it's a confluence of a lot of different factors that we're seeing at the same time. Of course, right, there's a lot of basketball reasons that happened. The latest collective bargaining agreement gave free agents a lot more latitude. So we saw the Kawhi Leonard saga where he basically forced his way out of San Antonio by milking an injury. We saw the exact same thing happen with Anthony Davis forcing his way out of New Orleans. And now, surprise, surprise, they're both playing in the biggest markets in the biggest market in the NBA as far as, the most storied franchise in the Lakers or whatnot. So you have a little bit of that going on, but also you have a lack of ability to adapt to the way the game has changed. And I think the way the Spurs won the 2014 championship, it was very, we call it the beautiful game among Spurs fans, because it was just a impressive display of passing, teamwork, and it's kind of a synergistic effect on the team. It wasn't built out of all-stars. You just had a bunch of guys who were able to raise their level of play based on the style of play. That was born of necessity. Now we saw the Golden State Warriors ape that style only with all-stars and be able to do it for season long. And curiously enough, their coach is a former Spurs player, Steve Kerr. So we kind of saw the upper crust of that, but the Spurs 2014 championship was kind of the purest moments of that type of basketball. But since then, we kind of put all of our eggs in the Kawhi basket. And when that failed, we had no recourse. Now, as far as Popovich specifically, it's interesting to note, at least among most Spurs fans my age and older, it was pretty well known that he wasn't a right-wing guy for a long time. Like it wasn't something that he wore on his sleeve, but it was something that if he'd get asked a question or blah, blah, it's not, you could tell he wasn't buddy with the GOP. And we were just kind of like, okay, fine, whatever. You're doing great, winning championships, putting our city and team on the map. It's wonderful. We have a big mix of political opinions in San Antonio anyway. It's just the way the city runs. But you'll notice we didn't hear anything from Pop while his job and career was in jeopardy, when he came within a game of being fired in 1999, or when they were in the midst of shutting Tim Duncan down in 2000 and getting booted out of the first round of the playoffs with a team that probably should have gone a little bit further. We didn't really see any of that until after 2014, when he had the professional capital to be able to say, you know what, my legacy is established. It almost does not matter what I say, because no one in Spurs Sports and Entertainment is going to oust me out. He's done too much for the organization at this point. So he's secure, and he's able to say probably these things he's had on his mind the entire time, which is a blessing and a curse, because then it takes the focus off of the basketball. I used to just be so excited to see Pop's name in print, because I'd be like, oh man, he's going to say something about my team. He's going to bring attention to San Antonio, or I'm going to pick up some nuggets of wisdom from him. And now it's kind of like 50-50. It might be about basketball. It might be about politics. And I'm really not interested in the latter, because that's not why he's relevant to me. But in the spirit of, the get woke, go broke kind of scenario that we have set up here, it is interesting to watch their nosedive. And it's interesting. Notice one real quick detail. If he had the Spurs' top assistant coach is former WNBA player Becky Hammon, and just as an aside, she is absolutely top of the line as far as coaches go. She's earned her spot on that bench. Multi-time All-Star, Olympian, led a summer league team to a championship, first woman to do that. She's earned her spot. And some people saw her spot on the bench as kind of like a token hire. That's not really how the Spurs do things, but because they don't say anything, like you were saying, nobody really knows. It's kind of vague. So there's been a couple opportunities within the past year or so where Pop got ejected from a game, or he didn't show up to a game, or had to take care of personal issues. And instead of Becky Hammon being the acting head coach, it was Tim Duncan, who just got there. And I'm not saying anything about Tim Duncan. He's the greatest Spur of all time, as Sean Elliott says. But if we sit here and think about it, what if Pop were not a hardcore, outspoken leftist, or at least a Trump hater, if you will? If he'd been saying that, and then these situations arose, and there's probably perfectly good reasons why Becky Hammon was not coached. Maybe she was not the lead assistant for that night. Maybe they already have a hierarchy set up in the organization where they want her to take over as full time and not have wins and losses on her record that are going to be attributed to Pop anyway. That's all well and good. But if he had been a Republican and said and treated her that way, the media would be all over him. He'd be a misogynist. He would be trying to keep women down, glass ceiling, blah, blah, blah. But because he's on their side, he's on the media side, everybody just kind of gives him a pass. Like, okay, fine, sure, whatever. That's what Pop does. And it's like, it shouldn't be a big deal. But at the same time, when hardcore leftists make everything identity politics such a big deal, it really is conspicuous when they turn a blind eye to something that would obviously be a problem if someone was on the right side of the aisle. So sorry for waxing long there, but yeah, there's a whole lot wrapped up in the Spurs situation, I feel like.
No, I think you're right. I mean, we see this almost daily on Twitter, on social media, on the news, where if anybody on the right, it's all about sexism, it's all about racism. Any decision Trump makes, it's because he's racist. A guy a guy today, he said, hey, look, there was the flu.gov, which was a website that the President Obama had set up for people to get information about the flu when the swine flu was really a big deal. When the Trump administration came in, they took that site down. Now, they didn't take that site down and just get rid of it and not put that information somewhere else. They took all the information that was there and they combined it into the CDC's website so that it's now all in one place, so that if you're wanting to know about any specific type of virus or anything that you need to know, there's a one-stop shop. You go to the CDC's website, all that information's there. You don't have to sit here and fumble around through 7 different websites trying to figure out what you need to know. So there's a logistical reason for it. There's a logical reason for it. It has nothing to do with, Trump hated Obama, he's a racist. It's because Obama was black, so he's just got to undo everything he did. It has nothing to do with that whatsoever. It's about ease of access. I would want to go to one website. It's a reason I still look at Yahoo, just because they have so much different news sources. 99% of what's on Yahoo is complete crap. But you get to see a lot of different perspectives because they feature from Fox News, they feature from HuffPost, they feature from the AP, they feature from all these different. So you get to see all the different headlines and kind of see how these people are thinking about it versus how these people are thinking about it. And when I think about the Spurs, when you think about the Tim Duncan days, you think about it just, again, it was so quiet. It was about the team. And I think, in 2014, what we really saw is we saw a shift in American culture where being woke was the correct path if you were in entertainment. We saw LeBron James. We saw, LeBron James and Dwayne Wade come out. As super woke. We saw lots of people at that time. It was about how woke can you be? Can we win this intersectionality Olympics? Can we get out here and get our names on TV and be, and then we saw ESPN take a shift to the left. Man, that was that Sports Center 60, whatever. God, that was awful. But and of course, this is when Colin Kaepernick was really doing his thing and getting big, and we were learning a lot about his stuff. So 2016, 2014, 2015, 2016, it really shifted. And for me, it got to the point where I didn't want to watch Spurs basketball anymore. I, like you, was a big Spurs fan. I liked watching Spurs basketball. I like the Texas Rangers, I like the Dallas Cowboys, and I like the San Antonio Spurs. I don't like anything from Houston. Houston can go fall off. I don't care. So I like the Spurs. I liked watching them, 99, watching, all those teams coming up, all those battles with the Lakers, with Kobe and his teams, with Shaq and those teams. Those were such great, epic battles of two really good teams with really good coaches, with great players that were just different, contrasting styles, and just see who could come out and who could be better. It was always great to watch. But, man, in 2015, 2016, it just got to the point where it was like, man, every game I'm going to have to hear something about politics at the halftime or whatever. And I just don't want to hear it. I want to watch a basketball game. I don't want to hear about politics while I'm watching a basketball game. I don't want to hear about it while I'm watching a football game. I want to watch a football game and nothing else. I do enough political stuff in my life, but that's not my goal.
Yeah, and that's the thing. When you think about sports has always been an escape of sorts from, the run-of-the-mill, everyday issues that people are concerned with. So what we saw most recently from 2014 to 2016, to your point, was this weird obsession with every public figure's political persuasion. And for some reason, that was put on a pedestal. And people started to judge those celebrities not by what they were actually good at as celebrities or what helped them get to where they were at, which is their, God-given ability. But now it became, okay, well, where do you fall on the issues? I need to figure out if I support you because of that. And that's never the reason why those individuals were in the spotlight in the first place. So that's the problem with this whole obsession with where everyone stands on every single issue, because it bifurcates away from what you should actually be focused on, which is what they were actually good at in the first place. So, seeing Greg Popovich do what he does and seeing, Colin Kaepernick, LeBron James, what have you, it goes to show that people have become less enthralled with public figures as public figures and more enthralled with them as advocates, ostensible advocates for whatever their point of view is. And when you think about what people have been doing, like for all this time, like for the longest time, people really didn't care what, someone thought about something as long as they were good at their craft. Like even on the right side of the aisle too, we have to cover both sides of this as well. Is, some even people on the right, they'll immediately glom onto any celebrity that espouses their conservative points of view. And my view is, if someone who I look up to in that forum says that they support President Trump or conservative values, I'm just like, cool, that's fine. It doesn't change my perception of you whatsoever. But for other people, it's an end-all, be-all. And that's the problem of this almost a zero-sum game that we have now in politics and their intersection with celebrity status as a whole.
Well said. So for me, watching the basketball, especially pro basketball, and a little bit of college basketball as well, it's kind of, the politicalness got to the point where it's just like, man, every other thing is political. But the other thing that really got to me was the rise of the, all the talent trying to go to one team to be able to win a championship.
Yep.
And you saw that even in the college game, where you now with the one and dones, you've got Kentucky getting all these very high rated guys coming in to play for 1 year to go get a championship and then go to the NBA, and it kind of that, and then going into the NBA as well. Both of those things combined just made it to where basketball wasn't nearly as much fun to watch, especially during the normal season. Now during the playoffs it's a little different, because then there's money on the line, or there's stakes on the line, there's a ring on the line, and it's the March Madness has always been that mystique about it. It always has that real what's going to happen, you never know, bracket buster situation, and it's a lot of fun to watch that. But the normal season, it's kind of like there's so many of them, I don't really care anymore. Especially NBA, it's 80 games in a season,
82.
Or more? Yeah, that's and the same thing with professional baseball. There's just so many games that trying to keep up with every single one gets to be almost more of a chore than just being able to sit down and relax. So don't get me wrong, I still love professional baseball, I still love baseball in general, but I definitely don't pay as much attention to it during the regular season as I do during the postseason. So, and with the politicalness of it, it's gotten to the point where, regular season, whatever. And I'll go watch something else, or, now that I'm married and, have a job and all that other stuff, there's so much other things to do to occupy my time. It just doesn't mean as much to me anymore.
Yeah. And that's really the travesty of the whole over politicization of society, but especially sports. Like I feel like half my Twitter followers don't realize this, but I enjoy talking about sports about 10 times more than I enjoy talking about politics. I just happen to talk about both a lot, but if I'm given the choice, I'd usually choose sports. And that's because sports has the ability to cut across so many otherwise, very staunch socio-political lines that, it brings people together who would have nothing to do with each other otherwise, just because they root for the same team, or maybe even just root against the same team. So because of that, I have a very passionate stance for the sanctity, if that's hopefully not too strong a word, but the purity of sport. And we should keep that separate from all these petty things that divide us, because there's enough that divides us in our day-to-day life that all washes away because, hey, they've got on the jersey of my team, of my town. And at that point, the only enemy or the only other should be your opponent. And even at the end of the game, we can come together over what brought us together in the first place, and that is sport. So when I see, like Damani said, I don't care about a celebrity opinion, even when I agree with them. Like, for example, Kanye West. I had people on the right side of the aisle who all of a sudden were all about everything that Kanye had ever produced, simply because he had voiced support for President Trump. And I understand why that was a big deal because of the entertainment aspect of it. But I'm just like, wait a minute, why wouldn't you just like him for the music that he's produced, for the reason that he's famous in the first place, or not like him for that? That's perfectly fine too. But I'm not going to let someone else's actions in the voting booth dictate whether I enjoy their talent as it stands on its own merits. So it detracts from the purity of entertainment, the purity of sport. And that's not to say that no figurehead should not be entitled to their opinion or not feel free to express it. But I feel like Damani said, we put it on too high of a pedestal and lend so much credence to it, and then make our decisions on whether or not to follow them or not based off of something that has nothing to do with their talents. It really does. It does diminish your enjoyment of whatever their talent was in the first place, whether it's pro sports or entertainment. I mean, I still watch pretty much every Spurs game we can. By the way, we beat the Mavericks, and I am so happy about that. I'm going to have to go back and figure out how the hell that exactly happened. But, I still watch
it. Lost to Cleveland.
Yeah, we're not going to discuss that at this time. Yeah, and so I'll watch every game that I can, even because I'm just a basketball junkie. I'm a sports junkie. Mm-hmm. But those who had to drop it or saw it fall by the wayside, I completely get it, because who wants that real world crap shoved down your throat every single day, especially when you're trying to enjoy something that has nothing to do with politics. So,
I mean, I like you. I am a sports guy. I mean, I'm a huge Texas Rangers fan. I'm not as big in it anymore, but I used to be able to go all the way through single A and list you roster position by roster position. I mean, back in the early 2010s to probably 2015, I could give you the entire organization top to bottom. I could tell you the draft picks. I could tell you the 27th round guy. I lived, slept, eat, and breathe Texas Rangers baseball. And I'm a lot that way with Dallas Cowboys as well. I really enjoy watching them. But, again, another thing about the Cowboys is that Jerry Jones keeps them very apolitical. When it comes to baseball, you have so many different personalities. But, again, we don't really hear that much from the Rangers as terms of, political stuff or anything like that. You just pretty much hear baseball-related stuff. And that's what I want. Look, you're paid to play baseball. I want to hear you talk about baseball. I can do the political stuff myself. I don't need somebody, it's like my wife one time asked me, why do you watch golf? Because I can't do what they do. That's why I watch golf. Because I can go out and try to replicate what they just did, but I can't do it. And watching these guys and trying to see how the hell they do the stuff they do when it's whatever sport it is, that's what I like to watch about it. It's the fantasy of it, knowing that this is shit I could never do in my life. That at my best day, I couldn't make that happen. And these guys do it routinely. But, what you were talking about, I want to go back to we always heard about Michael Jordan, like in the 90s when we were having the race riots out in Los Angeles and stuff. And people were really on Michael Jordan to take a stand. Take a stand, come out and make a stand. And say something political, say something. And Michael Jordan came out and said, I'm not going to do it. And people, why? Why won't you do it? Because Republicans buy Nikes too. He understood back then that it wasn't about appealing to a certain segment of people. It was about appealing to everybody you could. And I think that's why Jordan, when we talk today's standard, when we talk basketball with people who are in their late 40s, early 50s, and maybe even a little older that were basketball fans, that's why Jordan will always be the most beloved basketball player, because he just played basketball. He just worried about selling shoes and playing basketball as well, and we saw him come out when he had the flu. We saw him come out when he was injured. We saw him play no matter what, and that competitive spirit. And today, I understand it's a little bit different with sports science and some of the things we know. Yeah. But there's so much load management. There's so much just not, if I go pay $50 to watch a basketball game, I don't want to see LeBron sit on the bench. That's not what I'm paying for. I'm paying to watch the guy play. I'm paying good money to see this guy play. And if I'm having to put my money on, whether I'm going to go watch a game or not, and I think there's a chance that the best players on that team are going to sit out that night, then I'm not going to buy tickets to that game, because that destroys the value to me. Because I don't, like with any sport, like with any sport, you want your team to beat the best team, and you want your team to beat the best team when they're at the best. You don't, in the NBA Finals in 2014, we didn't want LeBron to get hurt. We didn't want Kyrie Irving to be hurt. We wanted them to beat the Cleveland Cavaliers when they were the best team in the world, who had just beat us the year before, and that we were going to get that retribution. And it happened, and it was glorious. And I happened to be in San Antonio. I got to walk around. the Riverwalk after Game 6.
I'm so freaking jealous right now. I was stuck in Missouri that whole finals.
I was in San Antonio. I was on the Riverwalk, man, at the Marriott Riverwalk, and we just went down and partied on the street, dude. I mean, it was a time. But the thing is that we want to see this at the best, and we want to have it be as good as it can be. And unfortunately, we're not getting that anymore. And it just diminishes, to me, the product, and makes, we see ratings for the NBA are diminishing.
Yep.
Ratings for MLB are starting, NFL still got good ratings, but we're seeing XFL games outrate NBA games, and good NBA games.
Yep.
And that just says something about where the American public is with what we're getting.
Well, I think you brought up a great point, and Damani, I know you have something to add to it as well. But yeah, no, I think you brought up a great point. You brought up a great point about the about why people view Jordan as the greatest basketball player of all time. I'm one of the people, like I said, I'm a basketball junkie, if you will. From pure basketball evaluation standpoint, I consider LeBron James to be a superior individual player to Michael Jordan. But there are two reasons why his legacy will never be able to surpass that of MJ. One, MJ was the first mover. He was the biggest player at the time when the NBA truly went from a niche sport to an international phenomenon. You can't, it's like a copier company can come up with a better machine than anybody else on the market, but because they were not Xerox, they're not going to have that brand name recognition. They're not going to have that power of first mover. That's more of a business term than anything, but it applies to sports. You're always going to be trying to measure up to the first guy that was the guy on that type of scale. But the second reason is exactly what you said regarding the social aspect. People don't want to see the face of an entire league, kind of debasing himself to pick a side. I don't need to see LeBron James with a safety pin on his lapel to indicate support for Hillary Clinton or that he's safe to talk to. Like all that stuff does is take your celebrity and your status and diminish it to, I'm going to prop up this segment of my fans over this other segment of my fans. Mm-hmm. And if you don't like it, well, then that's too bad. And it just underscores that selfishness and then I'm not going to say that teams are always loyal, because, I mean, shoot, we saw the reason DeMar DeRozan is playing in San Antonio right now is because the Raptors organization was not loyal to him after he had sworn fealty to them basically for life. So there's a little bit of both that goes on, but for the most part, stars in the league realize, and sports stars in general realize, that they hold all the cards, and because they're given so much celebrity clout and social media clout, it kind of, if that's what their passion is, they are going to leverage it in exactly the ways that we've seen. We are going to see more Colin Kaepernicks kneeling. We are going to see more Kawhis and Anthony Davises bolting at the earliest opportunity. We're going to see less of fans rooting for their team and more just, one year you're rooting for the Cavs because LeBron plays for them, and the next minute you're rooting for the Heat because LeBron plays for them. It's a very different approach to fandom, and some people can argue whether it's good or bad, but it definitely is. It makes you yearn for, I think, more of a pure time of just kind of my team versus your team. And Damani, I know I stepped all over your toes. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I just want to piggyback kind of off what you said there too about 1 minute someone's a Lakers fan, 1 minute someone's Cavs fan, 1 minute they're a Miami Heat fan, and I think what that goes to show more than anything is that whole generational concept of instant gratification has really seeped into the form of sport as well, and that inherently diminishes the game. Some of the best moments that I can remember from my time, I'm still a Spurs fan, but from the glory days of the Spurs franchise, was that we developed a reputation for being a team that brought in players and developed them over long periods of time, and the players were fully bought in to what the coach had going on, and they eventually were able to reap the benefits of that patience. And now, we see people like, Kevin Durant, he jumped around, LeBron James, he jumped around, all these other players are jumping around now just trying to get that quick dopamine hit that comes with winning an NBA championship. And that inherently cheapens the game, because at that point you're not really supporting someone because they are, they're gifted and they've worked hard at their craft. They basically just align themselves with other players who can get them to where they want to be. So that whole instant gratification really has cheapened the sport as we know it. I'm not nearly, full disclosure, I'm not nearly as prolific a Spurs fan as my older brother is. So I can't quite be as verbose on this topic, but those are just the thoughts that I have, is really just watching from the sidelines, literally and figuratively, and seeing how these different cultural shifts we've seen have really begun to seep into those games and those pastimes that we all love.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to point out that Ross at the beginning of this show said it was going to be the worst show for him because of the fact that it was 3 Aggies to him, and he made sure to throw the bomb of Spurs to get us
got it in early and got us going, baby.
As far
Get it
away
off.
from Aggies anything as possible. So I'll
Hey, buddy, I spent a lot of time in school. I know how to strategize. I knew where I was going right away.
All right.
Well done.
So I want to kind of go onto that towards football. So for football, professional football for me has always been that, like, I like it. I liked watching it, and but I've never had like a team. Like when I was a kid, it was the Cowboys, and it was the Cowboys up until Deion Sanders came in, and they had that Pizza Hut commercial where he said, "You want 20 million or 15 million?" And he goes, "Both." And it was like, because you could get both on your pizza now, and he won 35 million. And ever since then, because the Cowboys went from being a blue collar team or that worked hard and had that great O-line, that great tight end play, and then they went to being a superstar team. And it's just like, to me, it was like, why are we going to be all about one or two superstars? They're not what won us the Super Bowls. Those are that's you won another Super Bowl with that superstar, but after that you just dropped off because you no longer have that that work ethic reputation that you used to have. That, and Jerry Jones did what Jerry Jones does best and screws up a good situation because he needs to be able to take more credit than the coach does. So that to me led to me not being a Cowboys fan anymore, and then I became more of a who's got the most Aggies on their team pro football fan. So for the longest time I was a Denver Cowboys fan, and I still am because Von Miller's up there.
Denver who?
What did I say?
You said the Denver Cowboys.
Did I? Good Lord.
We annexed them.
Yeah, there you go. The Denver Broncos because of Von Miller. And then I'll cheer for whoever's got the most Aggies on their team. And like Ross can attest to that. When we were going for the Super Bowl, I literally chose San Francisco because they had one player and one coach that was an Aggie versus Kansas City only had one Aggie or one player as an Aggie. So I chose San Francisco based purely on the fact that they had one more Aggie than Kansas City did. So to me, it's professional sports are, they're fun to watch, but they're not nearly as passionate to me as the college sport is, especially college football. There's such pageantry, there's such historic history behind it, and there's such thanks, Ross. And there's such, there's is a lot more involved, and I can get more behind it because I actually feel like I'm a part of the team, even though I'm not. And I know y'all are probably the same way. You know, you're members of the 12th man. You're both. Well, I know Trey, you were in the Corps. Damani, were you in the Corps or no?
No, I was not in the Corps.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
He was only on the football team, so who cares?
Okay, I was wondering about that because I could have swore I recognized his name from somewhere, but I wasn't sure if it was football or if it was just I saw him on Twitter all the time.
I'm not special. Anything to do with football. I was blessed with the opportunity. I always said that I didn't want to join the Corps because they woke people up early in the morning and made them go run around and stuff like that and yell. So naturally, I took the best course, which would be to do the same thing basically with football. So I walked on to the A&M football team when I was there from 2010 to 2011, just as a walk on as a linebacker back then. It was really it's an experience that I'll never regret. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it just seeing the behind the curtain, if you will, of the beast that is athletics, collegiate athletics in Texas, specifically with football. So yeah, I mean that was my experience with that, but just kind of seeing even some of the paths that some of my even former teammates have taken over the years. Christian Michael, I think he plays for the Seattle Dragons of the XFL now, and I've seen a few other names pop up here and there. So it's nice to see them still doing what they do. But yeah, that was my experience with the whole football side of things. So I decided to shift gears and jump into politics, and that's become my true passion. But I'm happy to see the others that I used to call teammates also go and be successful as well. But it's unfortunate though sometimes. Seeing some of the ignominious ends that a few have potentially reached, and I think we all know who we're talking about with Johnny Manziel, the famous number 2. And, just seeing the disrepair that sometimes celebrity can bring to you. So in a sense, even though I was only a walk-on for 1 year and then was released from the team, I already had identified that there were some key areas of my character that I could possibly start calling into question because of the status that I had achieved as a collegiate football player. And just seeing how that affected me after 1 year, I can't imagine how it affects someone who is as prolific and ubiquitous as Johnny Manziel is. So, just looking at the whole life cycle of his career and many others, it's just interesting to see what factors can lead to one's continued success or which ones can lead to one's ignominious end.
So you flashed it real quick on the screen just then, but what's that big hunk of metal on your finger?
Oh, this is the Big 12 championship ring from 2010, 2011, when we tied for the Big 12 championship with, I think it was Oklahoma and Nebraska. Yeah, yep, that's right. So that's my claim to fame. But I've been wearing this ring now for a good 9 years now. I can't believe it's been that long. But it's definitely it's a part of me, But I'm actually more proud of the Aggie ring than I am of the other one because the Aggie.
You Aggies and your rings, I swear.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have a fetish for the rings. You already know.
Yeah. So I guess let me explain part of why I am still an Aggie fan. I still like watching Aggie football. I still watch Aggie sports. I tagged Kyle in a post the other night because that alley-oop dunk the other night, that was something. Boy,
the Baconator.
He threw that's called throwing it down right there. I watched that about 4 billion times on Twitter. I grew up an Aggie, and my dad was an A&M. Of course, Kyle went to A&M.
Our names are Kyle and Ross.
Oh yeah, duh.
Yeah. So I did the Corps visits. I was all set up to go to the Corps. I was all set up to do all this different stuff. I applied to A&M. I got accepted to A&M. I was lock, stock, ready to go. And then, my life just diverged from that path. That wasn't the path that I really wanted to take. I wasn't ready to go to college at 18 years old. I wasn't ready to take on that commitment at that time. If I had gone to college at 18, there's no question that I would have dropped out. I would have failed out. Because I was not ready to take on that commitment. I was ready to go do something other than school for a little while. And it took getting out in the real world. It took having a job and realizing, wait, I want to make more money than this. I don't want to work this damn hard to make this little bit of money. So the education then became more important to me. It became more of, I don't want to work for people that I fundamentally think are not as smart as I am. Mm-hmm. So that's where education to me. But I caught from somebody a lot of flack for not attending A&M when I had the opportunity. And it just got to being annoying more than anything that, okay, this is not the only school in the world. This is not the only option. There are other schools that are just as good as A&M. I understand that A&M is a powerhouse academically in most subjects, but there's other schools that are very good as well and have their own traditions. So you may see, I don't know if you can see, it's black. I got the orange S on here. So I went to Syracuse. I went about as far away from A&M as you could get. Yeah. And that's where I got my master's degree. I got my MBA from Syracuse.
Nice.
So I went to UT Arlington to get my bachelor's degree, and then I transferred. I went up and got my MBA up in Syracuse. But I guess A&M's a great school, but it's not the only school in the world. It's not the only school that you can graduate from. And now that I'm out here, it's like, okay, well, there's Aggies around, but it's not that whole thing where it's like, oh my God, you got to be an Aggie to get a job.
Mm-hmm.
But I still enjoy watching Aggie sports. So when I watch Aggie basketball, when I watch Aggie football, I do root for A&M. But now the nice thing is when they lose, Kyle catches it hard when they lose.
We run out of time, but we never lose.
Yeah, exactly.
So no, y'all, LSU, that was a loss. You go ahead. Come on, man.
Yeah, okay. I'll give you that one.
It didn't matter how much time we had on the clock that one. We weren't winning that one.
I could have given you a week. Y'all weren't coming back on that one.
Yeah, no, I think, back to what Kyle was saying earlier, there definitely is it's weird, the emotional connection between pro sports and college sports. And I'm different in that I root for the Spurs almost just as hard as I root for the Aggies. But if I had a gun to my head and I was like, there's only one that I could watch for the rest of my life or be associated with for the rest of my life, I choose A&M. And that's because at the end of the day, a pro team, it's a franchise. It can come and it can go. That we could wake up tomorrow and at Spurs Sports and Entertainment, they just sold our hockey team, the Rampage. They sold them to Las Vegas. And it's just like, okay, they've been here for however many years. Bye. And that's just the way it is because it's a business. College is not like that. You've got institutions that have been around for hundreds of years that have put down roots, and you have family ties that run crazy deep. Like, I mean, I'm sure y'all know, maybe I can't remember if I told either of y'all this, but our dad went to A&M. Our mom went to Michigan, but our dad went to A&M. He's class of 83. He was in the Corps Cadets. And if he hadn't gone to A&M, I probably would not have either, because that's just how strong that family tradition pull was on me. Like, I saw what he had made of himself. He was the first of his family to go to college. He grew up in Brown College Station, put himself through school, then went to the military. So I was just like, you know what? I want to do like my dad did. So I went in and I joined, I didn't join Squadron 2. That was my little personal spin on things. I ended up joining Squadron 3. Which ended up working out because I ended up meeting my wife in Squadron 3, and she's sleeping in the other room and probably wonder why I'm keeping up all this noise. But it's those family ties that run so deep that are what make college sports, I think, so special, because that win or lose, you're going to be there, blood, sweat, and tears until the very end, and that means a lot more to. I think it means a lot to most people than they really care to admit. I'm trying my hardest not to be one of those parents that's pressing my son to go to this school or that school, but I am going to tell him I'm only going to pay for A&M. But yeah, it's one of those things.
What's that shirt say?
Texas A&M Aggies. It should say Texas Aggies, but I couldn't find one that just said Texas Aggies on it, so I apologize.
I mean, you're setting that seat early, huh?
Yeah. Exactly. Well, let's put it this way: he knows the Aggie band better than he knows his ABCs. So I mean, I don't know how that happened. It's just stuff that's around the house. I have fun with it. It's really cool. And it's like Ross was saying. There's other great schools out there just as good as A&M. I will stop short of saying better because my pride will not allow me to do that. But it's about maturity. And what he said about, I was not ready to go to college at 18. I wish more people would have that conversation with their kids. Like, for me, I was ready to go to college at 18. I was an old soul. I was a goody two shoes. I was ready to follow my father's footsteps. Perfect. Awesome. That's just the way it worked out for me. everybody's not wired the same way. You might come into your own earlier. You might come into your own later. That is just fine. But until we have an honest conversation about that, we're going to be forcing more and more children, more and more young collegiates into college who aren't ready for it. And then we turn around and we have people like Bernie Sanders or just the government in general who will prey on that. Be like, hey, okay, everybody's going to college, so let's just make it free. And what does that do? That devalues education even further. So it's a very holistic view. But I wish more people had taken Ross's stance and been honest with themselves going in, because I feel like we're cheapening the education in this country and hamstringing our youth into thinking that there's one panacea to approach life, one way to success. I can tell you right now, my career path right now, I'm in waterworks, which is kind of the very, very little sister industry to oil and gas. We buy from a lot of the same vendors and stuff, but I could not have told you 10 years ago. I graduated 10 years ago. I couldn't have told you this is what I'd be doing. It's not what I went to school to study. It's not how I envisioned my life unspooling. And unless I'd been, well prepared by my parents, not by school, by my parents, to kind of take life as it comes, I could have ended up on my ass in a lot of different ways. So it's a gauntlet that a lot of young men and women have to navigate coming straight out of high school. And I don't think that we're doing it in the best way to set them up for success right now.
So I did want to ask, because you said your mom went to Michigan. So how was Christmas in 1995 for you guys?
We went to the Alamo Bowl. It was awesome.
We were there too.
We were there too. Yes.
Yeah. No, they dressed us. They dressed us in half Aggie gear, half Wolverine gear. And we went to see the march-in downtown. It was the coolest thing ever. Everybody was just like, "Oh my God, there's a family of Aggies and Wolverines."
So Kyle and I were at that game as well.
No way.
We were at that. Our dad took us to that game as well. We had in our bedroom, because Kyle and I shared a bedroom. We had the banner that our dad bought us one of the T banners from there with the A&M Michigan. That was the only ball game that I've ever been to. So I just had to ask, because it was like, well, man, Michigan A&M. Well, those two have come together before.
Builder Square Alamo Bowl.
Yeah.
And it was won by A&M kicking nothing but field goals. I think it was like 18-15 or something of that, the final score.
It wasn't
a ugly game, but it was intense, because you had the last vestiges of the true wrecking crew going up against the early vestiges of what would become Michigan's national title team. So it was a very intense game. I do remember that much.
So it is kind of funny that you said your dad's class of '83, because our dad's class of '83 as well.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, so it's kind of, but he didn't join the Corps. He was a blend transfer and then finished there, and he got to go to college because our grandfather had served in the Air Force, and he and his four brothers were all first generation Aggies, except they all four of them went, and they're 2 years apart each. So it's kind of like, okay, you're first generation, but your brother went here too. Are you still first generation? Yeah. But
but our dad was the second brother, but the first one to graduate.
True.
I will give him that. Give him that fact.
Oh, that's cool.
Nice.
Yeah. It's like in our family, I'm the second brother, but I was the first one to graduate.
Yeah.
Shots fired.
I knew he was going to bring that up.
He's your brother. He's got to.
In the Schumann lineage, the second kid is usually a boy, and it's usually the best of the family. My son is my second born. So he's my only son right now, but he's my second born. Our dad was the second born. I was the second born. We just see kind of a trend starting to establish itself on down through the generations.
Well, the second ones, we get it easy, because the older ones are the ones that paved the way. Like, God knows, my older brother, he was the standard bearer. He was, the one that you looked up to at all times. He was the one who actually beat me out going to the National Spelling Bee way back. I think it was 2000, 2001 or whatever. I was the second oldest, and I'm a little bit more of a wild child in some ways. But I always rely on the older one to keep me grounded. So I'm sure that's the same dynamic y'all have as well.
Somewhat
50-50. Yeah, 50-50. Yeah, it's a little different. I think I had the more independent streak. I at 14 years old moved to North Dakota, started training dogs. for a lady who's the only woman in the Gun Dog Hall of Fame happened to hire me and let me go to North Dakota and train dogs with her. And I did that every summer. And, I got opportunity. And that was kind of what led me not to want to go to college at 18 is I just got all these opportunities to do all these really interesting things. And it was like, man, I'm in the middle of so much stuff right now, whether it's training dogs, whether it's doing this. And I've always had that entrepreneurial spirit. I've always had that very independent streak where I don't want to be told anything. So, one of the things is like our family owns a fairly large ranch. And, I know for a lot of our family, that ranch is, and it means a lot to me emotionally. Like, I would hate to see the property go, but at the same time, I don't really want a piece of that property. I want my own.
Okay.
I want to build.
I'll take that piece, Ross.
I want to be able to build my own legacy. That's derived from my work and it's derived from my passion. That's derived from what I've been able to accomplish, not based off of what somebody else accomplished. And a large part of like me moving out to West Texas was every time I would get a job, because our dad worked in oil and gas, every time I would get a job near, in our hometown, it was always, oh, well, you're so-and-so's son. Oh, you're so-and-so's son. I don't want to be so-and-so's son. I want to be me, and I want to get jobs based on my ability, on my ingenuity, and on my, professionalism. I don't want to be, I got a job because this is my dad and everybody knew him versus, whatever. And same for Kyle. I mean, he went into a completely different industry so that he's, completely newbie and unknown in that industry to that.
Yeah, that's actually why I started going by Trey because, my dad, like I said, he was born and raised in Bryan College Station. Then he went to A&M, and he actually went by both his first and middle names growing up at different times in his life. So I'd run into people all the time my freshman year, be like, "Oh, you're Lee's son, or you're Eddie's son," and blah blah. And it was just kind of like, you know what, I don't want to get lost in the shuffle here. I'm gonna put my own spin on it. Still proud to follow in his footsteps, obviously, but it was just at some point you have to. I think it's just part of becoming a man. You have to be able to take that conscious step to put your own mark on the world in some way, shape, or form, and that was my way of starting to do that. And it was. It obviously grew into something that I cherish now more than ever. I call my son Quattro, even though his name is Eddie Lee as well. It's because it's just like, look, I want him to have his own legacy as well, and I think that's important. It's a sign of maturity, a sign of independence, and honestly, I think that's the true spirit of Americana when it's all said and done.
Yeah.
I had a buddy whose his name's Everett, and he had a son that he named after him, and he was the fourth, so the son's the fifth, and I started calling the son Cinco. And everyone was like, at first they were like, why? And they're like, oh, it's 5 in Spanish. And they're like, and then it just caught on. And now they, at least last time I talked to him, that's all they ever called him was Cinco. They didn't even call him Everett anymore. He was Cinco. So, my little fun nugget there as well.
So let's switch before we talk any more about A&M. And let's switch to talking about politics a little bit, because you guys, now you guys are both sports fans, but do you guys make your mark by talking politics for the most part, correct?
Correct.
Yep.
So, okay. So let's talk about what's going on. And we had another gentleman a couple weeks ago, St. Kincaid. I don't know if you're familiar with him at all. He was on with us, and we were talking a little bit about what's going on, like with the Blexit movement, with all these walk away movements, all these different things where the Republican Party, the GOP, is now making a concerted effort to go after what would be considered its non-traditional voter base, which would be the black community, which would be the homosexual community, LGBTQ community, which would be all these other communities that weren't typically thought after by the GOP, that were thought of as whatever reason they weren't the big prize. But now the GOP has started to prioritize that a little bit more. Kyle and I, we're advocating a little more on the LGBTQ side that they prioritize that, because we've seen them, and at least in Texas, deprioritize that a little bit, to where I'm probably going to have a phone call tomorrow for some comments I made to the Texas GOP Twitter handle, because I'm actually know the Texas GOP. I know Chairman Dickey pretty well, and he may be giving me some phone calls tomorrow to say, hey, stop that. Which he knows is not going to actually happen, but he'll still call me and tell me. Anyway, so let's talk. I mean, how did you guys, did you grow up conservative? Did you grow up in a Democrat household, or how did you come to being conservative? And then also, what about it now just makes you so adamant that the conservative values are the correct values?
Well, we grew up in a household where both parents, were conservative. But I think what was even more important was that they never sought to indoctrinate us or foist upon us their own values. They were
only college choice.
They were very pragmatic and very forthright with why they felt as they did. We grew up, and I remember distinctly. I remember at least one debate that the family was watching at one point. I think it was back when George W. Bush was running for re-election. I remember that vividly. But
so Bush Kerry in 2004.
Yes.
Okay.
So I remember that. And I even vaguely remember some of the controversy around the recount with Al Gore back in 2000. But even then, at that point, you're really too young to really understand the gravity or significance of politics and how they relate to life in general. So at that point, it was just, all right, this is what my parents believe or whatever. So it's almost, as if when you're a Christian, like my brother and I are both Christians, you grow up in a Christian household, obviously. And a lot of what your parents do, you just do because that's the way things were always done. And then what really is important is when you actually leave that nest, that home base, if you will, and start going out, into the world yourself, be that college or work or what have you. That's where the rubber meets the road, because at that point, then you are forced to reconcile whatever you grew up with what your own thought process and, deductive reasoning looks like. So for my older brother and I, a lot of that came when we went to Texas A&M University. We had a chance to interact with many different people who thought many different ways. And that was when we were able to actually, readdress, why do I believe this? Why do I believe that? And that's where you really begin to forge your own identity. And that kind of touches back on the whole identity of, you being your own person. And that's what really college or gainful employment is a good conduit for. So, we grew up and, we started to mature politically around that time. I myself, not until 2012, like I said earlier. And what really was the linchpin, I guess, was some of the incidents that happened around 2012, 2013. That was Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman, Eric Garner, all of those situations. And those, for me, it was a situation where I had been misled by the media I chose to ingest. And the reason I'm so adamant about that now is because at that point in time, I didn't know any better. I was naive enough to think that, the news would tell it to me straight. And I found out that was not the case. And when I found out the sheer scope of their duplicity and their wanton misleading of the average American voter, I couldn't, look myself in the mirror and say, I'm going to regurgitate these lies anymore. So for me, that's when I became very politically outspoken, very politically adamant in the years that followed 2012 up to 2015, where it really all took off. And I know I'm speaking a little bit long here, but I'm almost done. But and then on top of all that,
own it, baby.
And on top of all that, you made a point about the GOP reaching out to different groups of historically underrepresented people in the party, being that minorities or Hispanics or LGBT or what have you. And what I would say is, I'm not sure that the GOP necessarily pioneered that. While they are doing it now, I think that a lot of those grassroots movements, like Walk Away, like Legsit, like even Legsit, which is for Latinos, I think that those were actually campaigns that were launched by everyday people like yourself and I, who just took it upon themselves to say, hey, I'm going to speak out because there is a dearth of representation here, and there's a dearth of action on the part of the actual party themselves. So the party is reaping the benefits now of the grassroots efforts. But now, too, what we're seeing more and more of is the party itself is realizing that they have to basically confront themselves, have a come to Jesus meeting and say, who are we exactly? Because what we're seeing with people like the late John McCain and even most recently Mitt Romney is there are a lot of rhinos, Republicans in name only, who were exposed by the Trump phenomenon. So now even within the Republican side of the aisle, we have these groups of people coming over, but we have to also make sure they realize who is their real and true political advocate and who is just going to say the right things at the right time to get reelected, because that, to me, is counterproductive to the movement of conservatism, remaining true to our values.
So I call those guys corporate Republicans because What I see is they like the rights tax policy, and they like the rights economic stimulus policies. They don't like much else about the right. They're not for the true individual liberties. We even saw with Bush, Bush pushing the Patriot Act, Bush pushing a lot of things that really delved into our personal lives and have removed individual liberties from us years and years later, where a true conservative would never have allowed that kind of impingement back into the liberty of an individual. So, I like to, I know the term rhino is more, but I call them corporate Republicans, because they're only worried. The Koch brothers are another great example of that. They're only worried about what the Republicans can do for them as far as making them money. And this is part of why the left hits us on the crony capitalism side. Because we see Romney, we see these guys that are more in the crony capitalism than true conservatives typically are. True conservatives tend to be more self-righteous and tend to be more about the community and about the everybody than just about what they can get for themselves. And I think it's great what we're seeing in the country, because with the Tea Party starting in 2009-10, we've started to see a bigger push towards individual liberty, towards constitutional, freedoms, and ensuring that people are allowed to be who they are. And so for me, you said it very early in the show, you don't want to be known as being, your skin color and a Republican. You're just a Republican. And I think it's so valuable for Republicans to stop putting labels to each other. I'm not a young Republican. I'm not a white Republican. I'm not a blah, blah, blah. I'm just a Republican, and you guys are just Republicans. And whether you're LGBTQ, whether you fall into whichever one of these sub-identities, you guys have a hashtag, which is, hashtag, what is it?
Identity politics is dead.
Yeah, so, the whole point is, if we're on the right, we truly shouldn't care what somebody's identity is. If you share values with me, which is that you want to see as many people get a job as possible, you want to see as much innovation, you want to see our country move forward as quickly, as great as it can, you want people to be able to start businesses, you want people to be able to live their lives the way they feel, you want people to be able to go into their homes and not feel as if they are spied upon or feel as if the cops are coming to beat down their door. If you want these things, it doesn't matter to me where you're from or what your skin color is or what your sexual preferences are, or, whether you like the blue bag of Doritos or the red bag of Doritos or any of those things. It only matters that we share values and that we can come together and we can try to adopt and get those values to be better represented within our country.
Yeah, that's the crux of our channel, and what you mentioned earlier about values. The way I see it, conservative values, right-wing values, however you want to say it, those are American values. Those aren't just values that I think only apply to the right or left side of the aisle. So that's why I have no problem. I actually take it as a fierce point of pride that President Trump was the first major candidate to win office for Democrats or Republicans who supported gay marriage before being elected to office. And that includes Barack Obama, who shifted his stance on it after he had already gained that high office in the land. So it's really underscores the fact that if we are going to espouse beliefs that we think are best for the entire country, we have to be willing to say, okay, are we going to play our own brand of identity politics now and say, oh, well, because you're this and you're that, you can't be a true conservative or a true Republican? No, it's what we are trying to say on our channel is that none of that should matter. Like that, you don't have to agree with my religion as a Christian to be as pro-life as you can be, or to be as pro-Second Amendment as you can be. That there's different areas of personal preference that we have the freedom to express, but when it comes to actually espousing those on a political platform, there's so much more common ground, I believe, on the right side of the aisle than on the left. If you look at the left, it's a coalition of violently and wildly disparate ideologies that are just kind of cobbled together under one roof. It's a house of cards. If anybody objectively looks at it, feminism cannot coexist with Sharia law. You cannot have illegal immigrants running rampant and at the same time support a vast welfare state. You cannot have those. The math doesn't work out. The ideologies don't work out. But because they are so willing to put that aside and just to be in lockstep, that's something that we have to look at ourselves. Not trying to replicate their groupthink, but replicate the fact that we have good reason to believe what we believe too, and we try to create our channel to where we're not always on the defense about everything. We state the facts about what we believe. We state our opinions on an issue, and we are able to do that without referencing our skin color, or without, if we reference it, we're not using it as the basis for our argument. And we're able to make that point and move on to the substance of the argument. Too many times I see people, especially online or on Twitter or whatever, get caught up in the semantics of an interaction, and conservatives get immediately put on the defensive because, let's face it, the left is extremely good at manipulating the discourse, manipulating language. Most of the buzzwords that we use today, even on the right, actually originated from some leftist groupthink that we've maybe co-opted for better or for worse. But in our reaction to such buzzwords, we're giving them control over the discourse. And what Damani and I try to do, either by reacting to our love letters from the left videos, reacting to hate, or just reacting to opposition, is we're trying to teach people how to take control of the conversation back. I don't need to give a 20-minute dissertation on why I'm black and conservative. No, here's why I'm a conservative. Now you answer me on my own merits and leave my skin color out of it. I don't need to sit here and go point by point and defend everything that Candace Owens said with Turning Point USA just because she happens to have the same skin tone as me. No, I can agree with her. I can disagree with her. We can still be conservative, still be on the right side of the aisle, and it not make a lick of difference to the argument that I'm making right here and now. So it's just, we've kind of had our transition. Yes, we grew up from a very conservative background, fortunate to not have our parents force that on us and let us make our own decisions. But being in the world and making our own decisions, I actually kind of had my own revelation around 2008 when I was at A&M. I'm class of 2010, so it was about halfway point. And I saw, hey, there you go. No, I saw the beginning of the wave of identity politics beginning to crest. And I saw it because I wanted to go into the '08 election with a completely open mind. We have Obama and the field, and then you had McCain and the Republican field. I wanted to just kind of see what everybody was at. I knew most of my values leaned right, but I wanted to be like, hey, let's talk. Let me see where we line up. But what I found was I was not able to have a single conversation, or not a single conversation. 90% of the conversations that I have with people, especially those who did not know me, I could not get them off the point of, wait, you're black and you are not voting for the black guy, just carte blanche. And that just rubbed me wrong, because I'm like, wait a minute, not saying that there's a hierarchy of blackness, but Obama is mixed. Like, he has the exact same ethnic background as my son sleeping on the other room. Like, I don't call him, oh, hey, you're black. I don't say, hey, you're white. He's his own person. But because we'd had that identity politics stone already set in motion, where it's like, he's black, you're black, you have to vote for him, or you're a bad guy, you're a sellout. I was just like, I want no part of that conversation. So no, I'm not going to espouse your party's platform, because I don't feel like it represents intellectual honesty, to be quite frank with you. So if there's anything that I could have gleaned from it as a walkaway moment, it's just that I realized identity politics was going to become a thing. I didn't realize how much of a thing over the past decade, and I think that's truly an indictment of our country. But channels like ours, interacting with people like y'all, hopefully that we can begin to take the discourse back and bring it to a more sane battleground, if you will.
And that's a good point. We talked offline about how, I had an underclassman. We were both like we said, I had an underclassman who I had helped significantly throughout her core career. At least I felt I did. And she, would come to me for advice, and I'd give it to her.
Mm-hmm.
And I always helped her, and tried my best to make sure that she was motivated, and she was staying in the core, she was staying in her outfit, and just try to keep her around, because I thought she was a good person, and I thought she had merit and value. And then after '08, she found out I voted Republican, and she's like, oh my God, you're so racist. And I'm just like, we've known each other for 3 years now, and I've, done my best to make sure you are a cadet and make sure you're a valued member of our outfit, and then you're going to turn around and throw that at me just because I didn't vote the same way you did? That doesn't make any sense. So that definitely rubbed me wrong. But
that's the problem with society as it stands today, is that you can have long-standing perfect relationships with other people who might not think the same way as you, but just don't know it. But the minute they find out that you don't come down on the same side of the issues on every single thing, they are the first to excommunicate you from their group of friends, if you will. I've lost hundreds, I kid you not, hundreds of friends for my political outspokenness over the years. And what it really goes to show is it kind of ties back into that whole thing we were talking about earlier, with different groups of people claiming to be, part of this political side of the aisle, and then they ostracize anyone who's not part of that, regardless of whether or not that person was actually nice to them or not. So at this point we're at now, we've got people who would rather, end long-term relationships or friendships or what have you, just because that person doesn't think the way they do. And that's the abdication of both critical thought and the true reason behind why you form friendships in the first place. I'm not your friend because you think like me. That's never been my intention. That's never been why I choose who is my friend or not. I'm your friend, if you're a person that I care about. And now people are willing to trade that basic concept of friendship for the more insidious option of political affiliation. And I find it reprehensible.
So for me, and I think, you said it, Trey, 2008 was of course, that was a big election. We really were seeing a shift in the way politics play within the United States, where all of a sudden it became like it was two sports teams. It became like you were rooting for the Super Bowl. And it wasn't, hey, we're all one country and we're just going to vote for different people. And at the end of this, we're all still going to be one country. It was, you are Team Democrat or you are Team Republican. And I remember on MySpace, let's go way, way back here. On MySpace, so I worked at Grand Station Entertainment there in College Station. Kyle got me a job there at the bowling alley. I worked there. So on the night of the election, I was at work. And I remember getting on MySpace and saying, look, okay, you guys won, but it's not like, okay, we have bragging rights for 4 years now because we won. Now it's okay, let's – this guy that you voted for, he promised lots and lots of stuff. Let's see if he comes through on some of this stuff, and then let's see how that actually works out for the country. Let's see if that actually makes anything better. But it was so much of, oh, we won, you guys lost, suck it, where it was like, what just happened? What happened to civil discourse? What happened to just being able to have a conversation with people that you disagree with? And I understand that is, early in our lifetime, that was already gone because of Clinton and because of, Bush and because of all these other different things. But, that was when it really hit home for me that, God, if you're a Democrat, then you're supposed to be Team Democrat. And if you're Republican, you're supposed to be Team Republican. Why can't we just evaluate candidates based on who they are, based on what we believe and whether that person espouses the things we believe or not? So that to me, that was a big election for me as well. And I wanted to go back to one thing you just said, because me and Kyle had a big rift on it on Twitter today with our last guest, the guy who was on last. We were talking about leftist economic policy and how, for me, I argue that leftist economic policy is meant to favor major corporations. And I have an economic background. I come from an economic background. Most of my MBA was spent studying economics. I've been around the world looking at economic situations. So I argue that leftist policies are really an attempt to prop up big companies. We raise minimum wage, which pushes out small businesses, which pushes out small competitors. We, make all these laws to where you need all these lawyers, again, making it to where only the rich can afford to pay for these lawyers to be able to do these things. So, what do you guys think about that? I mean, is there any bit of that to you where you see their hypocrisy when we see AOC saying, oh, it's about the individual, it's about the small person, it's about, making sure the employee gets to work, but yet their policies directly benefit Amazon, Walmart, the big corps. They don't benefit mom and pops.
Yeah, well, Damani and I both have business backgrounds. We both got degrees from Mays Business School. So that what really blows my mind is the rank ignorance that comes with the average American voter when it comes to business. And that's not to say that everyone is stupid. It's just that many people do not see fit to do their own due diligence. So what happens is you hear a lot of really nice buzzwords. We're for the little guy. We want to stick it to the big corporations. We don't like billionaires. We want to raise the minimum wage. Yada yada. All that sounds well and good on its face, but the fact that it sails through, because you can hear that, and then all it takes is 5 minutes of research to realize, oh wait, the math doesn't support this. That's not going to work. You raise the minimum wage, that cost is going to get passed on, or those jobs are going to get cut. Okay, so we're cutting off our nose to spite our face. Cool, can't do that. Let's find out some other policy. But no, people just hear, oh, this will benefit me in the here and now, and let's do it. And we just run off half-cocked at that voting demographic that does that. And the politicians are more than willing to prey upon that ignorance, and to a degree, politicians are always willing to prey upon and leverage ignorance within the constituency. So I'm not absolving anyone necessarily, but the fact that Democrats have made this their entire platform and try to posture themselves as if they're truly fighting for the middle class, when every single one of their major policies, if implemented, would put even more of a strain on the middle class. It really highlights how insidious they have been when it comes to economic policy, and how little research the average American is willing to do just to vet these sort of policies. And it goes back to what you were saying earlier about the team sports aspect of politics that we kind of saw rising up about 10 years ago. There's nothing that anyone could do in this world to convince me to root for the Texas Longhorns over Texas Aggies. Nothing. Like you could tell me they go out and walk little old ladies across the street every day of the week and it wouldn't matter to me. I'm still rooting for the Aggies. Like that's kind of the mindset that we've gotten into with politics, where it's just like, I don't care what the Democrats say. I don't care if it makes sense. I'm going to vote for them regardless. Or we have that on the other side of the aisle as well. That type of thinking is so dangerous, because you abdicate any sort of responsibility, any sort of leverage that you have with that demographic. We see it with minority communities right now. The Democrats don't truly care what African Americans think, because they know they have that vote in the bag from Jump Street. But if you are making promises to someone that you know is going to vote for you 95% of the time, are you really going to be scared of that 5% if you fuck up? Of course not. You're just going to be like, oh, well, you'll vote for us next time anyway, so who cares? That's what we're seeing on a larger scale when it comes to economic policy, because they realize that there are no consequences for them promising crazy off-the-wall shit like Green New Deal or something like that. They're like, oh, well, y'all are dumb enough to vote for it, and when we pass it, then shoot, your hands are tied anyway, so what are you going to do? It's infuriating, which is why Damani and I are trying so hard to get people to do their due diligence. We actually, on our channel, The Wright Brothers, we try to shy away from labels as much, simply because they get leveraged so easily against you if you're not careful to do a little bit of research. We call ourselves the Wright Brothers. It's not just right side of the aisle. It's not just Republican. We try to be the Wright Brothers as in being correct. Like, if there's something that we disagree with, we don't care which side of the aisle it's on. We're going to let you know. We're cognizant enough of our own beliefs to where, yes, we realize more often than not, we're going to line up on the right side of the aisle. But we're not afraid to be like, hey, we don't think this is right. We're going to tell you why. And that's gotten us in trouble from some people who call themselves Republicans. And that's perfectly okay with us, because we're not about espousing and towing a party line, because it leads to exactly what you said. You get manipulated and preyed upon far too easily, because politicians know about the team sports aspect of politics. It's not a secret at this point.
Do you think that's why Biden was so sure he was going to win South Carolina? Was because he's
Yes.
was Obama's vice president, and he had that black vote, and he knew that without a doubt he was going to get that black vote in South Carolina, and that South Carolina being such a pivotal state, he just knew for a fact that that was going to swing him everything, and he then worked behind the scenes to get Klobuchar and Steyer and all the other people to go ahead. This is
the same dude who was talking about black kids rubbing the hairs on his leg, and then segues into talking about roaches. I mean, can you imagine? Can you imagine if a Republican had said anything near that?
I'm glad I gulped my water down real fast.
Corn pop, man. He was out there with corn pop.
That's more of a referendum on the African American voting bloc as a whole, to be honest with you. Because the fact that basically the Democrat Party for the last 5 years, pretty much ever since Trump threw his hat in the race, or threw his hat in the ring, I should say, was, oh, white men are bad, white men are racist, they're evil, we are the party against old white men, and we've seen the media jump onto that movement as well. So you get an old white man who's older than Trump, mind you, and just because vice president for a half-black man who you liked but who did very little demonstrably for you, you're going to support him outright. That just goes to show the honestly the very supercilious attitude the average Democrat politician has towards the electorate, is that they think that, oh, well, we can just weaponize this black vote. It's always in our back pocket. Therefore, we never have to work for it or actively court it. And we know they're going to fall lockstep with whatever we're going to say. And what's even worse is that a lot of people in the African-American community self-police themselves. And they're the first to call someone else out and say, hey, you're not supposed to do that. We're on this team, right? I'm just like, dude, for so many years, the African-American community fought for freedom and the ability to go about their lives peacefully in the best way they saw fit. And then for them to trade that freedom for ideological shackles, to me, it's just wholly abhorrent.
So for me, the big thing was when I was studying economics and I was looking at the left's economics, I was going, man, this doesn't really make sense. But then I started to realize that when you look at the Fortune 500 CEOs, when you look at the billionaires, they support leftist economics. And the reason for that is it locks them in as the billionaire class.
Yep.
It creates these subsidies that they rely on. It creates this government spending that they rely on. It creates all of these plans that they rely that help their businesses. So, I was talking to our dad about this today because Walmart used to be predatory on price. They would drop their prices to absolute jack nothing to run other people out of business. Then we passed laws that said they couldn't do that anymore. So what did they start doing is they started being predatory on labor.
Yep.
And so if they can get you to raise minimum wage, they can afford to pay that extra minimum wage. Then what they do is they wait for the mom and pop shops to go out of business because they have to raise their prices to be able to afford this new higher cost. Then what does Walmart do? What does Walmart have now that all the mom and pops are gone? Self-checkout. Now it's automation. Now instead of having 30 cashiers who are making minimum wage, you have 2 people working. Maybe they're making slightly above minimum wage. You have 2 people working and 30 self-cash checkout lines. So now we've got 28 people per shift or so that don't have jobs. And so I was talking to a guy who, he's on the left and I respect his opinion, but he was saying, oh, well, it's better to have these higher paying jobs. No, it's better to have a job. It's better to have a job that you can go work at, that you can gain experience, that, because the worst thing for you in the job market is to go to a job interview and say, I haven't had a job for 4 years.
Yep.
So when you can go in and you can say, look, I've had a job. I've been working. Yes, it was a minimum wage job, but I showed up every day and I did what I was asked to do. And I made sure I got what I needed to do done. And yes, I wasn't, the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, but I have a work ethic and I can prove it to you. I have bosses' recommendations. Now you can start building. But what we're doing, we've basically illegalized teenage work. What we guys did when we were kids, going and working in grocery stores, going and working in other things, doing this kind of work where we didn't make very much money, but we gained experience. We gained an ethic. We understood that you had to wake up every morning, that you had to be ready to go. And these are things that we're depriving kids of today because we just simply, so when the left says, oh, we're about the men, we're about the worker, then why do all the big billionaires support your policies? It doesn't make any sense.
The core tenets of leftism, if you will, I don't even call it liberalism. I call it this crazy new radical strain, which is more leftism than anything. Leftism thrives on a caste or pseudo caste system, which is why you see billionaires that are fine with leftist policies, because like you said, it locks them into their status or locks their company into their place in the market. So what you do, you lock in the top, but you also lock in the bottom. And so you're going to have those people who can't find those jobs. They're going to constantly be scrounging for ways to make it on the new minimum wage or just be out of their job completely because those jobs get automated. So what does that do? You have a perpetual underclass. And what are you able to do then? You're able to pit the little guy versus the big guy and be like, hey, this is how you're being put down. This is how you're being oppressed. And it would actually be true if their policies are implemented. But then guess what? You have a brand new hierarchy or Olympics or intersectional Olympics where it becomes more of an emphasis on class, which is actually true Marxism at the end of the day. So that's basically what it is. It's a move towards Marxism, but it's under the guise of compassionate liberalism, which is just radical leftism. But the more people that can see that and kind of expose it for what it is, nip it in the bud, be like, look, the last thing that the left wants is a completely free market. Like I'm not necessarily an anarcho-capitalist like some people are that I know out there, but I'm pretty dang close, because that's one thing that neither party it can control, and that's what scares the absolute shit out of them. They don't want a complete open marketplace where the consumer can have carte blanche over who wins and loses. So if you're able to rig the game and say, hey, where we want these corporations to succeed, if you espouse these values, yada, yada, they don't have to worry about the free market quite as much, because they can always put a restrictor plate on it, if you will. That's a stock car reference, but I don't know how else to put it.
So I'm probably going to get in trouble on Twitter because I call government subsidies legal money laundering.
Yeah,
that's my term for it, because all it is government then choosing. So there's a Twitter handle which is Conservatives in Texas for renewable energy. Oh God, me and them, we go at it on Twitter. Listen, I'm all for renewable energy if it was actually good for the environment and it was actually good economically. Windmills do not make money; they lose money. That nobody would install them if it was not for government subsidies. If it was not for the federal government giving these companies money to install these windmills, they simply wouldn't exist, because they do not pay for themselves. They do not create enough electricity to pay for themselves. Solar panels, we spend more carbon emissions creating a solar panel than it will save in its entire lifespan. So again, it's not environmentally feasible to have it, and it's only because of the subsidies that these things exist. And my thing is this, this just destroys innovation. It destroys, because what would happen is that, okay, windmills are not economically feasible. So people would go make a better windmill. They would design something that is economically feasible. They'd either make it cheaper or make it more productive. One of those two, so that economically it made sense. But because of this large government subsidy, there's no emphasis on doing that, and we're just going to be stuck with these crappy windmills that don't make money, spending government money that we don't already have, and we're just going to end up no better off for it. I know the projection is that renewable energy will be 30 to 40% of our electric output by 2030. There's absolutely jack crap chance that happens. I'll put every dime I have right now on that. There's jack crap chance that by 2030, 40% of our electricity comes from renewable energy.
Yeah, that's just a statement that a lot of leftists will say as a way to show that they care so much about doing this and working so hard and moving so quickly towards this goal. Even with their whole deal with the world ending in 12 years, everything is about giving you this specter of immediacy, so that you are forced to take action immediately. And that, to me personally, that's just another way to manipulate the average uninformed individual to say, hey, this is what I'm trying to do for you. You have to join in now, because if you don't, in 12 years, the world's going to be a terrible hellscape. And I'm just like, that's not the case whatsoever. And just to wrap up, like in general too, like all these efforts they're making to, make the world more sustainable. It's kind of funny if you look at the actual trail of, how even all this production is happening. The production itself is actually costing more in some cases than the cost they're trying to defray in the first place.
What's always made me scratch my head is like the people that are so adamant about getting this renewable energy are usually environmentalists. And environmentalists are always about preservation of certain species, such as the whooping crane. And it has actually been proven that these windmills are decimating the whooping crane population because, the whooping crane doesn't know better than to not fly through the turbine, and the turbine kills it. And so you're seeing, this thing that they're boasting about, the thing that they're so proud about, this wind energy, is actually decimating a endangered species, but nothing gets out about it. It's very minimal media exposure about it because they're protecting themselves. They don't want anyone to know that, one of our ideas is actually backfiring and hurting us really badly. So to me, it's always, how little people know about that is always, crazy to me. And another thing would be like with hunting. Most of the environmentalists, most of them are anti-hunting, but Ross and I grew up, going to Ducks Unlimited, going to Rocky Mountain Elk Foundations, other events like that, and those organizations are truly putting their money where their mouth is. They go out and buy up land to help restore it and make it better wetlands or better whatever it is for the animal that they're trying to protect. Like they actually want, the marshes, for the Ducks Unlimited, for this example, they actually want that marshland to be sustainable. They want it to be good habitat for the ducks so that they have places to breed, they have places to roost, they have a place to come in the winter, and all of that other things. And it's crazy to me how hunting is always villainized because that means, you're supporting the Second Amendment. Instead of, realizing for the fact that the hunters are the ones that are putting their money literally where their mouth is to be able to keep hunting, to have animals for their children to hunt and for their grandchildren to hunt and so forth and so on. And the only way that that's going to happen is, to ensure those environments are pristine or at least livable for these animals.
You're full of shit. You're full of shit. I support the Second Amendment. I support the Second Amendment. I got a 12 gauge. I got a 20 gauge. You're full. You don't. Shush.
AR-14.
I'm gonna take your AR-14.
They say they're against hunting and all that, but then they're the first ones to jump behind and promote a movie that's coming out called The Hunt, in which liberals hunt, everyday people. So to me, it's the height of being disingenuous, and there's really no end. Like we could talk all night here, we can't because it's already getting late now. But we could talk all day long about how they contradict themselves. But I think it's most important to just continue to be bold enough and willing enough to call them out on it when they do.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on what he said, and before I get too long-winded, thanks so much for having us on and everything. It's been fun and an honor to get to talk at length because we try to limit ourselves on our own channel a little bit. So it's kind of fun to chase some of these threads of thought and unspool them. But yeah, it's always it's going to be a never ending struggle to expose basically the misinformation that's out there. And it's ironic that we live in the age of the most ubiquitous information that's ever been in recorded human history. And yet so many are still underinformed, willfully uneducated, and will cast votes at the ballot box for policies that go at cross purposes with what they espouse in their personal lives or what will affect them professionally. So that's what we're here to do. That's what y'all are here to do. And I look forward to doing even more of this down the road because, it starts with stuff like this. We can't wait for parties to roll out a platform that's going to benefit everyone or move this type of discussion forward. It has to be grassroots and everyday Americans kind of taking the bull by the horns and hanging on for dear life. So thank y'all.
Well, thank you guys so much. And, I can't agree with you guys more. It takes civil discourse. It takes starting just people talking and having an exchange of ideas. And, we may not all be perfectly lockstep with each other on certain things, whether it be economic policy, whether it be healthcare policy, whatever. But, willingness to have a conversation, willingness to sit down and talk to each other. I will say, Kyle and I initially planned that our shows would be 30 minutes to an hour. Within about the first 30 minutes of that, we realized that was never going to happen. And between how long-winded I am and how long-winded he is, there's just no chance. So we said, you know what? Let's just scrap that. Let's just make these long-form interviews and actually sit down and talk about things and try to go through them as much as possible in the time allotted. We can't even put together an outline for shows anymore because it'll be 7 hours before we get to all of it.
That's the beauty of being well informed and having things to say and being able to speak your mind on any given topic. It's a beautiful thing.
Oh yeah.
We may not have the best information, but at least we are strongly convicted behind it.
There you go.
So before we leave, I just want to inform you, since y'all are kind of buddies of Kyle, I want to inform you of some of his most recent gaffes.
Oh, thanks.
And, for our listeners, so just today, Kyle said that he, was moving horizontally and laterally, which was a great tweet.
Thanks.
I was so proud of him. The USMCA, Kyle, do you care to explain why they have those snazzy blue uniforms in the USMCA?
Yeah, the first episode, he sent me a thing going, oh, we're going to talk about the USMCA, and I hadn't seen it or anything, and we usually have a Discord server where we send each other articles back and forth to read and discuss about, and he never sent me anything about USMCA. So I'm sitting here, looking it up, trying to figure it out, and going, I'm lost. I don't know what we're talking about here. So I honestly was like, is it the U.S. Marine Corps Association? I don't know what. I have no idea what's going on here. You purposely didn't put this in the show prep. What's going on?
It was on every website in every bit of news at that moment because it was right before they passed it. It was literally being talked about every minute. I was like, dude, you can't not know about this.
I had been hunting all day. I had no chance.
Yeah, sure. I'm the one with 5 kids. We'll talk about man later.
Never mind.
So just the other day, Kyle decided that he wanted to challenge me on the geographic location of the city of Milwaukee.
Yeah, that was fun.
So Kyle, where's Milwaukee again?
Wisconsin. So
Kyle the other day was damn set that it was in Minnesota.
I got Minneapolis and Milwaukee backwards. That's my bad.
He just I let it go the first time. I was like, all right, man, cool, you got it wrong. We'll move on. And then about 2 minutes later, I hear, you jackass, it is in Minnesota. And I was like, no, it's not.
If it makes you feel any better, geography is very near and dear to Damani's and my heart. I had somebody on Twitter who legitimately thought that Kansas City and St. Louis were the Twin Cities. And I had to, at first I thought that they were fucking with me. I was just like, wait a minute, no, you're serious? No, that's Minneapolis and St. Paul. But I didn't call him a fucking idiot, but I really, really wanted to. And I was just like, I need to log off for the night because I'm about to get up on my geographic high horse here. And yeah, I'll probably get banned from Twitter. That's probably not going to be a bad thing.
That's not even the right Twin Cities. The Twin Cities are Schulenburg and Columbus.
Oh, there you go.
right down I-10, man.
Everyone knows.
It's Bryan College Station, buddy.
No.
Hey.
About that.
Or better yet, even more famous, Dallas Fort Worth.
Hey, represent.
For all those who listen that don't know about Dallas Fort Worth, there is a 45-minute drive between Dallas and Fort Worth if there's no traffic.
Yep.
That's insane.
I went to UTA.
Speaking of that drive, Demai's gonna have to make that tomorrow, probably.
Yeah.
All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for coming on with us. We appreciate it so much, and thank you for spending the amount of time and giving us the amount of time you have. It's always great. We promise that if you guys ever want, we'll repay the favor, but we probably won't be able to make the time limit you guys want for your show. Just fair warning now. But we're more than happy to repay the favor on your guys' side, and of course, you guys are always welcome at any time you want to come back and talk with us and sit around and just bullshit and you know when the Spurs finally do get their 22 season streak broke, we could discuss that. so much for your time. Thank you guys so much for your conversation. We appreciate it so much and continue to have a great day. And God bless you both.
Hey, God bless.
Likewise, y'all. Thanks and gig 'em.
Gig 'em and God
Oh,
bless.
God. All right. Good night.
Good night.